Okay, so C-Roc, let's start with you. Sometimes in life, you have to lose in order to know how to win. Please share a failure or a mistake that taught you a valuable lesson and ultimately contributed to your personal growth.
So this morning, no.
Yes, exactly.
No, really, I think that everything that I go through could be considered a failure because I'm never getting to where I want to go all the way. And I'm always learning, and I look at failure as data collection. So I take a dip in the pool, and then I pick up some data from it, and I come back, and then I go back at it again. So specifically, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. One of them was chasing after production in business and not chasing after and developing proper relationships and, taking care of myself. This is called Risk on 360, I believe, right?
Yes, it is.
I wasn't doing 360.
No, do you know where you were? No, it's okay.
No, I'm just making sure. But I wasn't doing 360 degrees. So I think that's probably the biggest one.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Vinny, what was the most profound, life-changing moment that helped propel your transformation?
So there's actually two different ones because I've had a couple of different walks of life. And the first one, whenever I was a very young kid, I was about 10 years old, my stepdad was a pretty brutal guy. He was beating my mom really bad. I heard the screams. I come out of my little single-wide trailer room, and I could see my mom getting her head bashed against the wall. I run over there to try and tackle my stepdad off of her. He gets up, he gets onto me. She gets up and runs outside. My brother comes in, jumps in the middle of it. And then all of a sudden, I get up and I see my mom run out, and she goes out in the front yard. And I walk out there, and she's standing there with a .357 in her hand, and she pulls the trigger. And luckily that day, I believe God pulled the gun up or whatever happened, but skimmed the side of her head. And I decided that day at 10 years old that I was born into this really bad situation. And I could either be a victim of that circumstance or I could go out there and master it and do something different. So a 10-year-old me said, I'm no longer going to give in to that. I'm no longer going to believe that I have to be what I was born into. I can be something better and greater. And so I made that decision at 10. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I made the mental decision that day, and I remember it like it just happened yesterday. I used to weigh 500 pounds, and I went downtown partying in Nashville with my buddies. And we get to the end of the night, and we go back to our big parking garage, and we're parked on the 7th floor. And we get back, and I weigh 500 pounds, and the elevator is not working. So my buddy looks at me and goes, well, guess we're going to have to take the stairs. And so I start cussing and being all upset and everything. I was like, I can't believe we got to take these stairs. This sucks. Why don't they get this elevator fixed? And I had a pessimistic attitude. And he looks at me as drunk as he could be, and he goes, that's the thing about a guy with no legs. He'd give anything to walk up this set of stairs. And that was whenever I decided to start my health journey and change my life and go from 500 pounds to 300 pounds, so.
Vinny, you are truly such an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing that. Honestly, it really touched my heart. Neal, just based on where you started and what you were talking about, tell us your thoughts on acts of kindness. Are humans inherently good, or is it a learned behavior?
If you ever read Lord of the Flies, yes, that paints a pretty dark picture of humanity. The premise of the book is that a bunch of little boys are shipwrecked, and freed from the constraints of civilization, they devolve into murderous little beasts and are at each other's throats, killing each other in about the course of 6 weeks. And that is a novel, not a scientific conclusion. Because the truth is, there have been cases in history where people have indeed been shipwrecked. And in Tonga in 1966, a group of about a dozen young boys hijacked a fishing trawler to go out and see if they could get themselves some tuna. And next thing you know, they wind up on an uninhabited island, and they're out there for 15 months trying to wait for somebody to come along and rescue them. In the course of that experience, they built a little badminton court and made musical instruments and kept each other's spirits alive and kept a fire going, and one of them broke his leg, and the rest of them were, well, they fixed him and nursed him back to health, kind of ribbing him about the fact that he wasn't taking up his chores. By the time they were all done and came back to us, and by the way, they're in their late 70s now, and most of them are still friends. That to me is like a really good example of what happens in real life. Now, I told a friend of mine, I said, hey, Rob, you're always talking about how bad people are. What do you think of this story? And he goes, nope, not buying it. People are awful. Okay, so now he's on the road, he's driving. Lone Pine is not far from here, actually. It's at the base of Mount one of our tallest mountains. And he's being followed by a biker gang about 12 deep, and his little girl is crying in the back seat, and he's thinking to himself, I'm gonna let them terrorize somebody else. So he pulls off, and the whole gang pulls off with them. And then one of these old fellas with a big neck tattoo comes walking right up to the car and hands the stuffed animal that the little girl had dropped about 3 miles back to him. Now, that to me is, now, it really shouldn't surprise you that happened. That sort of thing happens all the time. And I just wanted to go on record as saying, when it comes right down to it, when things get worse, that's when people are at their best.
So true. So true. Amazing. C-Roc, how can individuals shift their perspective on failure to see it as a stepping stone rather than an obstacle?
I hate to be such a person of little words, but it's just a decision. You know, I think people want complicated to think that something's going to work, when things are really actually simple. And I'm a simple man, I keep things simple. So you just decide. It's really, you know, understanding that you cause and create your future through intention. Matter of fact, I hope you guys are taking notes today. I don't see too many pencils, but if you want to take notes today, this is one thing to write down. I've came up with a formula that works of how to cause and create your own future. And that is set intention. What you set intention on, you'll start paying attention to. What you pay attention to creates validation for your intention, and that creates existence in your universe. You can create your own world that way. See, there's things that are happening in this world that we don't even know about, and yet if you never hear about it, it really doesn't happen in your world. And so I think everybody should start today to think about, hey, I am in control of creating my own world, my own universe, my own future. And you do it through that formula.
That's great. Really wonderful advice. Yes. Take that in, yes. Vinny, can you please share some techniques and daily self-care routines that you use that help sustain where you are today and more of a balanced life?
I think for me, self-talk has been huge in my life. I used to look in the mirror and think, man, you're fat, or man, you're not worth it. And, you know, I would literally think those things, but then I would go out and try to be successful to try and hide the fact that I thought that about myself. Yeah. So for a long time, whenever I would go out and do stuff, I would go out so that I could prove to people that I was worth it. You know, I told you so. I told you I could get the record deal. I told you I could make it successful in this and that. And whenever I was on Biggest Loser, it was a big switch for me to see that I didn't want to be the guy that said, I told you so. I wanted to be the guy that said, see, you can too. And so to be able to take that out, and I realized in order to do that, thank you.
Yes.
In order to do that, I feel like you have to wake up every day and talk to yourself in a kind manner, because I think, I can't remember who the one that said it was, but it said when you talk, you're listening. So if you sit there every day and you talk bad about yourself and you look in the mirror and you see bad and you tell other people, even when people give you compliments like, oh man, you look great today. Ah man, I don't look good. Man, I wish I could do this. I wish I didn't have this extra here or whatever, you know. We all get guilty of doing that. But if you can look at yourself and say, man, I'm worthy of the things I'm willing to work for. If you get out there and tell yourself you're great, then you'll become great. So I talk good to myself every day.
That's right.
That is so true. Hard to do.
It is.
Let's be honest, right? Can we all raise our hands about that? Like, it's hard to do. See?
That's not how you use your words, Consuelo.
Hey.
It's easy to do. That's what I'm saying. It's easy.
Well, yes, but I also think that, okay, yes. Touche. But I do. I think that's really wise words. Hard to do all the time, but we can only strive to do our best, right? Every day. Neal, what role does mindset play in personal growth? And how can individuals cultivate a positive growth mindset?
Wow, that's something I'm thinking about all the time. I did a podcast with Todd, and he was very much on the sort of quantum level of energy vibration, meaning that in a very physical sense, having a good attitude creates a vibration that attracts like. So I had this experience. When I was first starting out in business, I was making no money. I had this Mustang with no hood on it. And one morning, I come out, I'm dressed in this business suit, ready to go to work, and it just gives me nothing. It gave me that. That's all it gave me. And this was back in the days of phone books. So I couldn't, I'm calling around looking desperately for somebody to come help me take this car in and get it fixed. And I come across this little tiny ad in the Yellow Pages. It's about that big, and it says, like Balkan Auto Repair Garage Business, or something like that. And I call him up and I said, hey, could you tow me in? And he goes, yes, I'll send my father. So this 90-year-old guy shows up, and I'm pretty sure he's new to tow trucks. And the tow truck itself might be missing a couple of really important parts. But he was this sunny guy, had this big head of ice cream white hair. And I'm trying to help him get the car hooked up. And in the process, my suit just gets mangled and greasy. Now, normally, I would have been furious. But he was just so sunny. And he was, right? He was just so upbeat. And I think he was Armenian, because when we were in the truck, he was like singing some Armenian folk song, trying to get me to join it. By the time we got there, and 4 generations of his family go to work on the car like a pit crew, he's just got me in a good mood. Now, the only person in the garage that isn't in a good mood is the woman who runs the place. She's as sharp as a German razor blade and has about the same...
As women are.
To me, yeah, right? And she's looking me up and down like I'm there to rob the place. But I'm just so lit up by this guy, I'm trying to make her laugh. I'm pulling out every joke I know, and nothing's working. And the best she could give me was, we close at noon. You have to be gone by then. So, okay. Car gets fixed. Brilliant job. They've steam cleaned the engine bay, which you can see because there's no hood. And I'm tickled, she says, it's $104. Okay, so now I'm tickled. And I pull out my checkbook, and I'm looking right at her, and behind her is a sign that says, no checks. It's got to be this big. And I'm looking in her humorless eyes, and she sees that I see the sign, and I'm going, oh, please. And just at that moment, the old guy, the tow truck driver, comes in with a little infant in his arms, a little baby. And the baby looks at me and goes, and he squeals in delight. And the old guy goes, oh, he knows you from before in the other life. God. And the woman says, well, if he knows you, a check's okay.
So good. So good.
So I believe if you vibe out enough positivity, it's gonna come back to you.
Love it.